All right, welcome everyone. I'm Richie Ratzak, this Assistant Managing Editor at the Record Journal, back again with another candidate forum. Tonight, we're joined by the candidates from the 16th State Senate District. We have Republican incumbent Rob Sampson and his challenger, Democratic nominee Jack Perry. Also on the call is Jesse Buchanan, a reporter at the Record Journal, who's going to be co-moderating the forum with me. We'll be alternating questions to the candidates. Many of the questions we're asking tonight came from our Voices initiative, the Record Journal, where we pose the question to readers and to voters, what do you want the candidates to be talking about as they compete for your vote? And we've got several responses, and we'll be sprinkling those into the questions tonight. The forum rules, so to speak, each candidate will get opening statements and then 90-second closing statements at the end. They'll each have 2 minutes to respond to questions, and with 30-second rebuttals available at the moderator's discretion. So we'll kick things off with opening statements, and we'll start off with Rob. Over to you first.
Excellent. Well, good evening, guys. Thank you for having us. I think most people know where I stand, which is simply that I am focused on preserving the American dream in our state. The Democrats have had one-party rule for nearly 40 years, and the result has been plenty of damage to Connecticut, both to our economy and more recently public safety. And since the pandemic, things are only worse. And next year will only bring more bad policy and more taxes unless we decide on a different course. I am proud to have been the loudest and most determined voice fighting for a rebirth of freedom and opportunity in our state. I'm running a clean campaign, focusing on my own record, but I will use this one chance to challenge my opponent on some of his claims. Aside from the name calling and claiming I don't own a business, which I do, and have never created a job, which I have, he also said that I played games with people's right to vote. I'd like to know how exactly. And he's also mailed thousands of voters stating that I am the chief defender of Eversource to make them believe I am responsible for high electric bills. That is an absurd statement that is the opposite of the truth. He is in favor of expanding subsidies for green energy and mandating payments for food spoilage. He even attacked me for voting no on a bill that would have created a new tax on electric bills. So I asked my opponent to prove this claim. It seems as if he will say anything to anyone to earn votes. He claims to be a moderate, but accepts the endorsement of NARAL and the Sierra Club, not to mention the Working Families Party, who includes defunding the police as a key part of their platform. I'll continue to run on my own record, but I encourage my opponent to do the same.
Okay, Jack, then over to you.
Hey, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, and a special thanks to the Record Journal for putting on this event today. A little bit about me. I graduated Southern High School in 2008, started my own small business in town, which is HQ Dumpsters and Recycling. Built that up to where it is today, currently employ about 40 employees, and it's growing every day. Just became a father, so now more than ever, I'm more worried about our future. Again, the partisan politics that we're dealing with up in Hartford, again, it just has to stop. We blame sides. I've been endorsed for the first time by both third parties. So I'm going to be on the ballot 3 times. I think that shows that I'm kind of in the middle. I don't look at myself on one party's issues fully. I support the law enforcement. Rob already stated that, again, I'm for defunding the police. Absolutely not. I have family and friends that are in law enforcement. I have pushed out some literature with his voting records. I cited his voting records. So again, if you don't like, me pointing that out, shouldn't vote that way. We really need common ground thinking. We can't keep battling, each other. Let's worry about our issues and let's work towards that. My opponent's been up there for 10 years. And again, our taxes are still rising. I own a business in this community. I employ a lot of employees, and we need to start working in the right direction. And the partisan divide needs to stop now. I will work with anybody. I will work across the aisle. And again, that's just anybody that knows me. That's who I am. Thank you.
All right, and the first question does come from our Voices initiative. Connecticut's revenues will sharply decline as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and as you know, Connecticut has a balanced budget requirement, unlike Congress. So in light of this, we received a question from reader Steven Iavana, who wants to know, how do you plan to handle our future state budgets in light of this hit to the budget? If you want to cut spending or raise revenues, please be as specific as possible as where you do that. And so since Rob started with the opening statements, we'll have Jack start with the first question.
Well, obviously, this year, I don't think anybody thought 2020 was going to be the year we ran out of toilet paper. We need to work on obviously fixing our budget deficit. Every year we talk about that. The taxes continue to rise. And as a small business owner, I pay hundreds of thousands of dollars every year in taxes. So again, I'd like to obviously increase our tax base, as far as not increasing our taxes, but maybe look into, sports betting, and again, that's could be a way of, additional revenue to our state to offset the budget deficits that we're dealing with. Read an article the other day on the Connecticut Mirror that again, this year, sales tax revenues will take about 40% our deficit that we were planning on. So again, we're working, I think towards, not having a deficit and making sure that we have sustainable, revenues in our state. And taxing the working class, I'm against. I'm against taxing tolls. I'm a moderate. They could say that I'm a Democrat. Again, I'm a job creator. I'm a community leader. Anybody that knows me knows that I just don't spend to spend to spend. I run a business. If I just continue to raise my rates with my customers, I'd have no customers. But at the same time, I'm increasing my employees, benefits in my company. And we need to make sure that we take those type of skill sets or practices to the state level. Again, we've had majorities on both sides or governors on both sides. And again, this isn't a one-party issue. This is many years. Our state used to be the manufacturing capital of the world. And we lost that to DEP regulation and the EPA, which again, I am for the environment. I'm in the waste and recycling business. And I think it's very important that we worry about our environment. So we lost a lot of that. We weren't diversified enough. And this year with COVID, it's challenged a lot of businesses, and it's heartbreaking seeing businesses close. So I will work up at the state to voice everybody's concerns and stop the increased taxing and really find solutions rather than just politicize it.
All right, Rob, then over to you.
Thank you. Well, unlike my opponent, I am not in favor of any new taxes or revenue sources at all. I believe that the state of Connecticut taxes us far too much already. And over the last 10 years that I have been in office, I voted on 5 different budgets that have become law in Connecticut. And I am not responsible for the situation that we are in because I voted against every one of those budgets. And I've worked every day that I've been up there to be the opposition voice for a better and brighter future for our state. And the way that is going to happen is by cutting spending. And I carry around a list of items with me, and I could just go through a bunch of them. We could get rid of the $500 million bailout of the city of Hartford. We could start requiring people to show up for unemployment. We could institute something called workfare, which is, I take that back about the unemployment during pandemic issues, by the way. But we could institute a workfare program, which would require people that are able-bodied who are on Medicaid to actually have to work or be looking for work to get their benefit. No more baseball stadiums, no more bronze statues, no more busways. I even tried to fix the Medicaid situation in our state using an Obama plan in 2014 that would have saved billions of dollars, according to Obama's experts, and the Democrats stopped me from doing that. What we need is a new direction in the state. The Democrats make their bones by expanding government. The more that they take money out of small towns like the 16th district and bring it to Hartford, they are using that money to expand government with state employees, with entitlements. And there's legitimacy in all of those things, but it has gotten to the point where it is so unaffordable for the average person that we need to start going the other way. And the only way forward for Connecticut to ever pay off our debt, our liabilities and so forth, is if we have a growing economy. And a growing economy is required if we're ever going to have the money to pay off our pension debt and meet our future obligations. And the way you do that is, instead of chasing people away from Connecticut, you have to encourage them to come here. And the way you do that is by reducing energy costs like electricity, which I have a perfect record of doing despite the claim that I'm the chief defender of Eversource, which I'm still waiting for an answer on. And I've never voted for a tax hike. We need to reduce taxes.
We'll get to Eversource a little bit later.
Okay. Is there a clock, by the way, guys, so I know where we are on time?
Yeah. Do you see there's a timer on the?
I do not see the timer.
If you scroll over on the participants, it's actually at the end.
Oh, yes.
list. Yeah.
So where was I on time?
You went over a little bit.
Over, but that's
Oh,
all
yeah.
right.
Well, forgive me. It's because I was waiting for you guys to interrupt.
We're still working out the bugs here. So
You got it.
and we will get to utilities and electric costs. Definitely want to hear your and Jack's thoughts on those. The next question we had was related to something we had talked about recently. What, if anything, should the General Assembly do to combat increasingly frequent car thefts and burglaries?
And that goes to Rob.
Yeah, so anyone who's been paying attention knows that crime is on the rise in our state. There's been reports of a 200% increase in car thefts in Southington. There have been 3 shootings in the town of Wolcott in the last month. I've lived here since 2003, and I don't recall another one before that. And if you talk to any police officer, they will tell you crime is absolutely on the rise. And part of that is because of the recent police accountability bill, where there is no gray area. It is a terrible, terrible bill. It may have had 1 or 2 salvageable provisions, but the majority of the bill undermines the professional men and women of our local police departments who do a tremendous job and should not be questioned unless there's some legitimate reason and some incident that occurs, something that happens halfway across the country that stirs up the emotions on a national scale, has nothing to do with the Southington Police Department, and they should not be held accountable for it. I know these folks, they are professionals, and they do a good job. The reason why crime is on the rise, though, is because the Democrat Party in our state continues to undermine police, and they've been doing it for years. They did a bill called Raise the Age, which essentially increased the age for juvenile offenders from 16 to 18, which turned into emboldening a lot of younger people into committing more serious crimes because there'd be no penalty or a limited one. The gangs, they take the 16 and 17-year-olds now, and they're the ones that they send out to go steal cars because they can get away with doing it. There was an excessive use of force bill, Second Chance Society, the risk reduction credit program, which I've been fighting for years, that lets violent criminals out of prison early. These are all bad policies put forth by the Democrat majority. Republicans voted against all of them. I will stand in the way. We can't elect any more Democrats and give them majority to damage the state any further.
All right, Jack, then over to you.
Yeah, well, car thefts, again, have increased, and people, you see it on Facebook all the time. You see it on social media. I've even been a victim of it. So obviously we have to find the root cause of that. Again, is it because people are out of jobs? I'm not going to politicize it. I stand behind the police. My opponent now mentioned the accountability bill. That's not even in effect yet. So to politicize and create this divide, why aren't we working with everybody? I would, as a state senator, I'd be reaching out to law enforcement. I'd want to see the data. I won't just stir the pot to create a bunch of emotions because, again, what solutions is that bringing? Just stirring everybody's emotions. Of course, I'm upset that I have to lock my car now. I shouldn't have to. I grew up in Southington where my family home, now when I go to my parents' house, the front door's locked. As a child, my door was never locked at my parents' house. And again, I don't think we should have to lock up our doors. So the problem is politicizing things. Let's dig down deep. I'm the type where I'll roll up my sleeves. I'll work with all the towns in the district to figure out why the car break-ins are increasing and figure out the age, because they're obviously catching some of the people and they're releasing them because of COVID. That's what I was being told. Again, I'm obviously not elected right now, but I am the type where I will not just politicize. I just won't politicize anything. I don't think there's any room for that. It's just creating a divide. I'm all about solutions. I'm not going to ever blame any side. I'm going to blame myself for the failure. My district is facing something and there's no solutions being done. It's my fault. Nobody else's. We could politicize this, blame the Democrats. I don't have a seat at the table. I want a seat at the table. I want to show everybody how hard I will work, and I will come to common ground and reach across the aisle. We don't see that in politics anymore. And I think that's our biggest problem. It's just, again, just stirring the emotions and not finding solutions. So I've been very involved with Southington PD over the last 12 years being in business and always worked with them, and I've partnered with them. So I will continue doing that and bring it to a whole nother level by bringing the voice of their concerns.
I really like 30 seconds if I can have it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say that the police accountability bill, parts of it are in effect, and either way, the actual passage of the bill has had a tremendous impact on the sentiment towards police officers. And also, I don't understand what the comments about politicization are about. That's what politics is. The different parties and the different candidates have different policies. The reason why we're having a debate is so we can discuss what our solutions are. I offered several solutions, which is to reverse many of the bad policies put in place by the Democrat Party, which have made us less safe.
Jack, did you want to respond?
Yes, I'm just going to simply say my slogan is people before politics. Again, that's the problem we're dealing up in Hartford. Is things are being politicized, and he's saying it himself, politics. What happens with that? It comes at the cost of the district, and I'm tired of it. Everybody's tired of it. I have a thriving business that I'm giving up time from, and I'm a new father as well because I want to see the future, in a different direction. And again, the politics just has to stop. I will set that standard, and we'll see something different up there. And I'm that energy that's needed. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on. The next question also comes from our Voices Initiative from reader Jeffrey Frazier, who asked, has Governor Lamont chosen the correct pace to relax COVID-19 restrictions, or should he be reopening the state faster? This goes to Jack first.
This year has been tough. As a business owner, it's heartbreaking to watch businesses close. I know firsthand as a business owner, I give up a ton of time for my family and events. And again, the financial struggles we go through and the hours that we put in. You do all that to then close down because of COVID. I want to see the state open up as fast as possible. I want to see everything go back to normal. But at the same time, I don't want to lose our loved ones. And I donated over 2,000 KN95 masks, during the beginning of the pandemic. And again, I was delivering those to nursing homes, just grocery store workers. I was delivering them everywhere. And it's real. Some people were afraid to go to work, and they were also dealing with deaths, that they usually didn't deal with. So I want to see everything reopen. Is there a way that we could do it faster? I hope, we can. Now that we have adequate testing, we could really, target areas and close things down differently, like in schools. Schools are closing, and opening every day. I want to see everything go back to normal. So again, as a business owner, I'm very upset and heartbroken that businesses have been closing. And again, we need to work with those businesses to make sure that, again, we are listening to their concerns and making sure that they can survive this pandemic. This is not something that we could just say reopen, not wear masks. There's some people that aren't. You know what? If my mask saves one person, that's a win. It's the easiest thing I can do. And again, my opponent has written letters to the governor to reopen the state, lawsuits. Again, that's the politicizing. I would be reaching out to business owners and listening to them and seeing if there's certain businesses that we could open. I'm tired of the universal approach that our government takes, a one size fits all. Doesn't work. Imagine, one size fits all on everything. It doesn't. But these are uncharted waters, and we need to make sure that we put our health and safety first and work with the businesses to make sure that they can survive this pandemic, and that obviously we have those businesses after, because again, we've all lost the business that we've supported. And again, being a patron there, you'd love to see them, reopen.
All right, Rob, over to you.
Each and every day over the last 6 or 7 months since we've been facing this pandemic, I have been speaking with my constituents who are calling and writing me, and I have been on the phone with countless people who are facing innumerable problems as a result of the pandemic, but maybe just as much or more so because of the decisions made by our state government. People are going to lose their businesses because of the decisions made by this governor. They're not going to reopen. People will lose their jobs. People have lost their jobs. And not only have they lost their jobs, they are not even able to collect their unemployment because the governor has ignored the responsibility of managing the Department of Labor and essentially asking me and my colleagues in the legislature to, be the go-between to resolve those issues, which we've done happily because I do care about my constituents. But it's his responsibility and he should do it. The bottom line here is it's not politicization to disagree about policy. If everyone agreed on policy, there'd be no reason to have a government or representatives or elections. People do disagree. What politics is about respect. That means not lying about your opponent's record when you send mail out. It's okay to have a disagreement about how fast the state should open. And I've never said, contrary to the mailer sent out by an opponent, that we should open the state immediately. I've never said that. I believe we should follow the science and the protocols like anyone else. What I have said is that the governor is not God or a dictator. The legislature should be making these decisions. He should not be farming it out to out-of-state organizations, and he should not be skipping the legislature, and he should stay within the confines of his role, which is to modify existing laws for public health purposes. And he's gone well beyond that, and he deserves to be challenged for it.
Would I be able to say something about that?
Yeah, I can give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. So obviously, right now we need a job creator. I started my business in 2008 during a recession. We're going into a recession, and again, my opponent, doesn't realize that, if we just reopen too fast, we're just going to go into other waves. I would, challenge his statement of that. He said that he didn't want the state to reopen immediately. At the beginning, he was doing it the right way, and I was actually pretty shocked that he wasn't politicizing it. But after that, he started, the lawsuit. And again, his statements in letters to the governor, instead of figuring things out and not wearing a mask.
Rob, did you want to respond?
Yes. I'm sitting at the same room, practically face to face with my opponent. And I don't want to continue to do this because I don't want a divisive race. I have tried to focus on my own record. I've not mentioned my opponent in any of things that I have sent out or any of my advertising, and I don't want to. I want to run on my own record. But you cannot sit across from me and tell me I said something I did not say. You put on a mailer that I said I wanted to open the state, and you linked to a radio show. But if you listen to the radio show, I never said that. I said the legislature should make these decisions, not the governor.
So this next question is for you, Rob, related to what we've been talking about. Obviously, we're gonna see some business closings. We're gonna see some probably pretty serious economic impacts from this pandemic. What would you propose to do to help the economy recover as the pandemic ends and as it's at least coming to its close, hopefully?
Well, thanks for that question, Jesse. I will say that I appreciate the extra couple of minutes on this topic because it's probably the most important topic that we're faced with. And it's a real shame that the representatives that are duly elected by my constituents and people across this state have essentially been silenced. The governor dismissed the legislature back in March so that we would not have a voice to carry the voices of our neighbors to Hartford to decide what to do about this problem. And essentially, he has been running the state by executive fiat. Now, I will give credit to Governor Lamont when credit is due. And he did a tremendous job up front by reacting fast and setting some protocols. But over time, he has expanded his executive orders. I believe we're up to like 77 or 78, which is way more than any other state. And he's reached into areas he should never have reached into, like interfering with private contracts between landlords and tenants. That has nothing to do with public health. And he's choosing sides and he's picking winners in these cases. The idea that he's doing it based on science or medicine, I can prove numerous times that he's not. I don't agree that he should have the right to determine which businesses are essential or non-essential. You don't say you can open up a liquor store or the Goodwill store or Target, and then you have to say that the small retail store, Susie's Dress Shop right next door, for instance, has to be closed when they can follow the same protocol. You're essentially putting them out of business for no reason. I believe that in America, we are free people. And ultimately, we are the ones responsible for ourselves. And it's up to people to decide whether their businesses should be open within parameters and protocols set by the Department of Public Health. I got no problem with that. And it's up to consumers to decide whether or not they want to go there or not. That's really the country we should live in. And if we did that, we would not be suffering the financial setbacks that we are. It's going to be devastating next year, and we will need experienced people to get it sorted out.
Jack, over to you.
Thank you. Well, again, I don't agree with everything the governor has done, but he's well within his authority. As a business owner, I know firsthand that businesses are struggling. We need to work with the businesses, figure out their concerns. And again, instead of just saying, hey, we should reopen, I wish there was letters coming from our current state senator voicing the concerns of the business owners, the constituents in his district. We need to voice their concerns and figure out solutions for them. Businesses need a lot of different, help, not just financially. They need guidance through these times. I will be that guy that will reach out to businesses, and I have a business background. I started my business, like I said, in '08 during a recession. There was no jobs there. I had to create my own job. So we need to make sure that we're working with the businesses, voicing their concerns, and also putting people's safety first. I want to see everything reopen. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and that could be part of our crime increase, is that people are trying to put food on the table. We have to find our root causes and what we can do. I agree. We shouldn't have a universal one-size-fits-all. I think our representatives need to, reach out to the constituents. I've knocked on thousands of doors, and a lot of the doors are business owners even. And again, they don't feel that anybody's reaching out to them and listening to them. And that's why, I'm running. We need a voice. We need to put people first. And again, people over politics. We're tired of the divide, and trying to find real solutions, I think, is very important. So we can't do it one size fits all. There's a grant program that came out the other day that small businesses could apply for, the CARES grant program of $5,000. I don't think that's enough. We need to work with the businesses and figure out their concerns, because not every business is suffering the same way. They have reduced seatings. There's a business in town that I was talking to the owner. They put up a temporary steel building so that they can continue to operate, at a different capacity during the winter. And they spent thousands of dollars on a steel building that is just going to be temporary. So we need to really work with the community and the business owners, and again, put safety first and find that happy medium, because as a business owner, it breaks my heart seeing businesses close.
Jesse, are we going to take the next question?
Sure. This question is for Jack Perry. Sorry, I got thrown off there. Large corporations sometimes receive tax incentives to move to the state. Different deals the state government will get them to move here. What would you do to encourage small and medium-sized businesses to either start up in the state or to come to Connecticut from other states?
I'm not a fan of corporate welfare. Again, I think it comes as another burden on the working class. We need to work with, again, the small, medium-sized businesses. They're the main bread and butter, I guess you could say, of our tax base in our state. So again, opening up a business during these times, I think, is very difficult. I give kudos to anybody that's trying. And again, that's your entrepreneurialness. We need to work with them to make sure that they have programs or guidance even. I think a lot of business owners don't know what to deal with. And, the first 5 years are the toughest. So we need to work with the businesses, to attract them to our state and new industries as well. Connecticut has a very skilled, trained workforce, and we have a lot of intellectual people here in our state, and we need to work with them to make sure that they're obviously employed as well. So obviously attracting more businesses to our state. I love our state. I don't plan on going anywhere. We have 4 seasons. We have some of the best, coastlines there. So I think it's very important to find that happy ground, is, again, not giving corporate welfare out where we're just giving them all these tax abatements. But at the same time, we need to attract them, because that's another way for us not to put taxes on the working class in the community. And again, it's more jobs. And I'm all about creating more jobs, good paying jobs, that is, with benefits. And the small and medium-sized companies too, it's a little bit different feeling than working for a corporation. Mom and pop shops, they treat their employees like family. I know I do. Anytime that they have issues, you work with them, and they're in the community as like you are. So again, in corporate as well as, other big companies, they got shareholders, and they're not putting, our state first, or our community or their employees all the time. They're looking at the bottom line and how much money they could bring to their shareholders. So I think it's very important that we attract more business in our state, and we create programs to do that, and guidance for them to be able to attract them and create more jobs in our state. Thank you.
All right, Rob, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Richie. So I agree on the subject of corporate welfare. Although I have heard Mr. Perry say before that we do need to offer incentives for businesses to come here. And I do not believe that we need to offer any specific incentives to any particular businesses or industries, but rather incentivize the entire state for everyone. And that is businesses, employees, college graduates looking for a job, senior citizens, state employees that are retiring. We want them all to stay here and grow our economy because that is the only way forward. I am very proud to have worked with businesses across the district over the last 10 years when times were good and recently when times are bad. And I've joined with a bunch of businesses, in fact, to file a lawsuit against the governor because they are not happy about the situation. They believe that the governor overreached and that his executive orders do go beyond the scope of his authority. And he does not have the right to decide what businesses are legitimate and essential and which ones are not, and to do it in an arbitrary fashion where he's deciding on one day that hair salons should be open and then changing the next day because of political pressure, or deciding that blow dryers are okay and then blow dryers are not. These are problems. This is the reason why we live in America, a country that is based on the rule of law. The reason why the United States exists is because people rebelled against the king, the rule of man, who was making decisions arbitrarily on a day-to-day basis and offhandedly saying, no, well, maybe with the hair salons, no, maybe not. That's wrong. We have rules we follow. We have a representative system of government. And I don't call it politicization, that I care very much for maintaining our system of laws and government and representing my constituents to the absolute fullest ability that I have. That's what I do every day.
Can I have a 30-second rebuttal there?
Yeah, go ahead, Rod or Jack.
So obviously my opponent mentioned another lawsuit. Again, we need to focus on moving forward. We can't keep creating this divide. I challenge him to reach out to the governor with solutions, real solutions for these businesses. Let's reopen them. Let's find programs and policies that will help them through this time. Again, creating this divide in the lawsuit, again, you think the governor is going to want to talk to you? Again, playing politics. Let's stop that. Let's work forward and make sure that businesses are surviving. Thank you.
Rob, do you want to respond? Hey, Rob, did you want to respond or should we move on?
No, I don't need to respond. I think it speaks for itself.
All right. The next question again comes from our Voices Initiative, kind of touching upon a topic that was brought up earlier regarding the gun violence in Meriden. And then today they just announced, the FBI announced the task force, the anti-violence task force in Meriden and Waterbury. So what we propose is legislation to stop the shootings and violent crime happening in Connecticut. Do you believe stronger judicial laws need to be in place to hold criminals accountable? And Rob, this goes to you first.
Well, we got into this a couple of minutes ago, but I will go a little bit further. Everyone knows that I have a A+ rating with the National Rifle Association, and that I was endorsed by them, and I have a strong record of defending the Second Amendment in our state, and I'm very pleased to have that record. But I also have the most principled record of actually trying to do something to stop gun violence in this state. And I will challenge anyone to put their record up against mine on that subject. The Democrats put in bill after bill every year to infringe on the rights of law-abiding gun owners, whether it's telling them what types of firearms they can own or how many bullets they can put in their magazine, or headline grabbing things like bump stocks and ghost guns. These things do not affect crime. What affects crime is getting illegal guns out of the hands of criminals. And I am the number one person trying to do that. Back after Sandy Hook, the state passed a bunch of gun control items, and most of it was not going to really be effective, except there was a good item in there, and that was the statewide firearms trafficking task force, a program that allowed police officers to communicate with one another all across the state to get illegal guns off the street. But do you know the program only lasted for 1 year? Because I guess, gun violence was passé after that, so they stopped funding it. And ever since then, I have been trying to get this program restored. And year after year, When I bring this bill up and ask them to do it, the Democrats vote it down on a party line vote every time. I think they should put their money where their mouth is, and if they care about gun violence, do something. I've already mentioned the bad bills that have driven up crime rates. The risk reduction credit program or the early release program is the number one thing that we have to fix outside of repealing the police accountability bill in its entirety.
Jack, over to you.
Yeah, I obviously there's an issue. The other day I had one of my employees that actually lives in Meriden show me his neighbor's ring footage of one of the shootings. And one of the neighbors got actually, I guess, hit with a bullet based on his story. And again, we have to find the root cause of that. And I'm happy that, they're working obviously towards that. But, again, people shouldn't be getting shot or bullets ricocheting because of that. I also want to make it clear that I am a gun owner. I'm a law-abiding gun owner. I've been an NRA member. I'm actually a lifetime member now. I've been an NRA member since I was 11 years old. I don't agree with everything the NRA stands for. I feel that they are now really politicized on a lot of issues. I actually got an F, and I'm okay with getting an F. I'll show my questionnaire to anybody. I believe in common sense gun control or regulation, and that is I believe in reporting lost or stolen firearms. I don't know. Again, I got an F, so I told the NRA I believe that, again, lost or stolen firearms should be mandatory to report it. If I'm a law-abiding gun owner, why wouldn't I say my gun's stolen? I believe that when my firearms aren't in use, I should lock them up. I believe in universal background checks. Those are just some of the problems that we're currently dealing with. In some of it's other states, but then again, the guns are happening to end up in our state. So I think it's very important that we create programs to protect my right, to own guns. And again, also protect the people that are the victims of these crimes. My opponent has actually scored, he's got the lowest scores against some of the moms against gun violence. I think that's very important that, again, I look at myself as in the middle. I understand that I own firearms and I'm okay with owning them and anybody owning them, as long as they're law abiding and we're doing the proper things to keep them off the streets. Reporting lost or stolen firearms, locking up your firearms, as well as universal background checks. But I think the biggest problem is we need more help, with some of our mental health programs in our state.
The next question is to Jack Perry. Do you believe the General Assembly has sufficiently addressed the concerns raised by the Black Lives Matter movement? Is there more legislation that should be proposed or legislation that should stemming from this movement that should be repealed?
That's again, I think the accountability bill was probably why again that went into effect. There's issues out there. For anybody saying that racism doesn't happen, again, I'm not saying it's happening in our community, but it happens. We need to listen to the community and make sure. I don't support any sort of looting, rioting. If you want to have a civil protest, I'm all for it. I went to one in Cheshire, and some of the speaking that occurred that day was very heart-touching and understanding. And I think our lawmakers needs to work with them. And again, don't blame the cops on it all. The cops aren't, Southern PD, like I said, I went through the Southern Deer program. They're great officers in our community. So to blame law enforcement for the issues that we're dealing with, no, there's more to it, and we need to listen to everybody. So again, I think that's where it's very important that, again, I'm for law enforcement. I'm not for rioting, looting, none of that. I don't think we're seeing any of that in our state, which is good. I'm happy that, there's no rioting or looting in our state. But again, you see it in other states. So I think it's very, it's a very emotional subject with a lot of people. And again, I think that at the end of the day, we're all, citizens of we're all residents in our state. And again, we need to work with the whole community as a whole. And again, stop the divide. I don't want to see politicizing things. I think some of these things have been politicized, and I'm just tired of seeing anything being politicized on both sides of the aisle. And we need to really just work with them and create programs to help them. Again, it happens. Racism, I think, happens everywhere, but it's not happening in my community, which I'm very happy about. And again, we need to continue working with law enforcement and our leaders in all of our states to make sure that we end any type of violent crimes or anything that's targeted based on race. But at the same time, peaceful protesting, I think is fine. It's a way for us to demonstrate, and I think it's important that we listen to people.
All right, Rob, over to you.
I disagree, and I believe that racism is a real issue, and it does exist in our community. I do not believe it is a tremendously prevalent issue, but I have witnessed the change in our country over my lifetime. I would say that maybe the best period in my life with the least amount of tension between minorities and whites was probably when I was in high school. I grew up in Meriden. I went to an inner city school. A lot of my friends were people of color, and we never looked at each other than as friends, and really never made an issue of it. Sadly, and I will agree with Mr. Perry on the subject of politicization when it comes to racism, the Democratic Party has decided that the way to defeat Donald Trump is to make sure that people believe he is a racist. And they do this by promoting things that he supposedly has said. They go back to Charlotte all the time. But if you actually read what he said in Charlotte, you'll realize he wasn't referring to protecting the white supremacists as good people. He said there were people wanting to tear down statues on one side and people not wanting to tear down statues on the other side. He wasn't referring to any white supremacists. But that is a useful tool for people who are interested in dividing us by race or class for whatever purpose. I believe in the founding principles of this country, the most beautiful principles that there are, which is that we are all equal before the law, and that every one of us has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I vote routinely against bills that cater to any specific identity group because it is wrong to pit people against each other and write bills that are specific to minorities or specific to the gay community or specific to women or any other group.
Do you mind if I add something to that?
Sure, you can take 30 seconds.
So obviously, I'm not saying that racism doesn't happen. I think it happens everywhere. It's not an issue like it used to be. I'm on the Southern Historical Society Board of Directors, and there's photos of the KKK used to meeting on our town green. We don't have that. There's other parts of their country that I think is really dealing with, again, the KKK or groups like that, that are trying to, again, create a divide of us. So I want to just make it clear that, again, I think Southington has been heading in the right direction. Again, it's always going to happen, but again, it's not alive and well like it used to be in the 80s.
Rob, did you have anything to add? All right, then we'll move on. The next question does again come from our Voices Initiative from reader Madeline Gallagher. If the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, should the Connecticut legislature take up action on abortion rights? I believe that goes to Rob first.
Yeah, forgive me, you were asking if the General Assembly should take up action on abortion rights.
Should take action on abortion rights, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, this is a federal law currently. I know there's a lot of talk on the national stage. And of course, again, a presidential election, they know it's a wedge issue. They're going to use it in every way, shape, and form to try and divide people along those lines. I am pro-life, and I am not ashamed to say so, just like Vice President Pence. But I have only ever attempted to pass 2 bits of legislation regarding the subject in the legislature. One of them is to ban 3rd trimester abortions, which I am very, very much against. In fact, when I describe myself as pro-life, basically that's what I mean, is that I'm against late-term abortions, and everyone should be. Unfortunately, NARAL, who's endorsed my opponent, requires that anyone they endorse follow their guidelines 100%, and they believe in late 3rd trimester abortions. So I'm curious to see that survey if Mr. Perry is sharing. And the other thing that I have put out is the requirement for parental notification for abortion. And the reason for this is not to undermine the ability of a minor girl to have an abortion, but it's partly because I believe a parent has a right to know. But even more important than that is it's because it catches predators. Do you know that the states around us actually have parental approval required for an abortion? We don't even have parental notification. You know what that means is that people, abusers, will take their pregnant 13, 12-year-old victims to Connecticut to have an abortion because essentially there are no questions asked. That is disgusting. And the fact that the Democrats in the legislature have blocked my attempt to make parental notification with caveats, like if you can say, look, my parents will throw me out of the house, well, then you can get around that subject. I'm ashamed that they will not let that bill be heard.
And Jack, over to you.
So I want to, make one thing clear. As a brand new father, I'm obviously pro-life, but I'm also pro-choice. I think that's a happy medium that we need to really work on. Women have rights. I should have no control over a woman's body. I got NARAL's endorsement because of that. 90-something%, 96, 97% of what NARAL does isn't all about abortions. My opponent mentions that I'm for late-term abortions. Again, that had nothing to do with the NARAL endorsement. It's actually legal to have late-term abortions in the state of Connecticut unless a woman's health is at risk. And at that point in time, that's a decision that the doctor as well as his patient needs to make. That is not a decision that I feel that government needs to get involved in. I'd be heartbroken to find out that, we're in our final home stretch and then there's a risk. And now you have to make a tough decision. It's very important that we make sure that we listen to the women. It's their bodies. And NARAL doesn't just, again, they make sure that women have access to the birth control that they need, mammograms, pap smears. I'm a guy. I don't know what women need, but at the same time, NARAL is making sure that insurance companies are held accountable to making sure that they are getting, the proper screenings that need to be done and that they're not declining them because they're putting profits. I knocked on a door the other day and on Sunday, and the woman ended up having stage 3 breast cancer, I believe is what it was. And now that she has it, her daughter's obviously, she did a test. Now she's got to worry about her daughter's having it. And I think that's where, again, we need to work with the women to make sure that, again, their voices are being heard and the proper procedures are being done. I think now that, again, their mom has stage 3 breast cancer, I think that the daughter should go through screenings to make sure that they have, the proper procedures done to make sure that they catch it at an earlier stage and a later stage. So again, I'm pro-life, pro-choice. Again, it's a very touchy thing, but I feel that at the end of the day, it's a woman's right to choose what they do. But I'm against any late-term abortions. I feel that, again, I'm against that. So.
I'd love to say something if I could.
Yeah, maybe 30 seconds.
I just want to share that both my mom and my grandmother, who passed a year ago at 104 years old, were both, my mom is still alive, obviously, but they're breast cancer survivors. And I have worked on the subject of breast cancer and insurance for it for the last 10 years in a really, really big way. And one of the most shameful things that's ever happened to me is I've been accused by political opponents for not being concerned about breast cancer, because in the legislature, you vote on hundreds of things, and sometimes you will vote on competing bills that achieve the same goal. And to have someone say you voted against breast cancer issues for one person when you actually voted for it in another bill is a big issue to me. And I guess that's 30 seconds.
Jack, do you want to respond?
Yeah, obviously, I think everybody's had a family member touched with breast cancer. It's a very common cancer, and we need to make sure that we're working with the women to make sure they get the proper procedures done that's needed. Rob Sampson actually scored one of the lowest scores with NARAL, and I think it's very important that we work to make sure that we are protecting women's rights. We've made it so far already that, again, going backwards and taking rights from women, I'm not behind that. I have sisters, I have, family members. Again, I feel everybody should be treated the same, and we should make sure that we're advocating for them and their needs.
Can I have 30 seconds? I mean, I passed on several other times.
Yeah, I can give you an additional 30. You did pass the last time around.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that no one is trying to infringe on women's rights. I have spent my entire life trying to defend the principles of freedom and opportunity for every person and not using the government to divide people. And I've been honest about it. I think Mr. Perry is confusing Planned Parenthood with NARAL. NARAL is only concerned with abortion issues. They have nothing to do with anything else. And my understanding also is that in order to be endorsed by NARAL, you have to agree with their positions 100% or you do not receive their endorsement. And they require people to be in support of late-term abortion. And that's just a fact. And we can just dispute it after. I would like to see your NARAL survey if you are willing to share it.
All right, we're gonna move on. Jesse, do you want to move on to the next question?
Sure. This question, we'll start with Jack Perry. I know you're both dying to get into this one. What's the cause of high electric rates in Connecticut? Can the General Assembly do anything to reduce them?
Sorry, you broke up there. I think it's about Eversource, correct?
Yes, asking about high electric rates, what the General Assembly can do, what you would do as a representative to bring those down, if anything.
So obviously we need to, work with Eversource. I feel, they're our power company, but at the same time, I think that is corporate greed that's getting in the way right there. And we need to make sure that they are running a sustainable company. After that tropical storm that hit the other, a few months ago, weeks, I'm losing track of time. After that storm hit, I was happy that when they went into special session, they brought it up. The Take Back Our Grid Act, I think, is very important. When Queen Street lost power, I was affected. My shop is on Triano Drive. We lost power for 3 days. And the problem why we ran out of power or didn't have power for 3 days was because Eversource didn't have the supplies to fix the lines on Queen Street. And again, as a business owner, I understand, again, the cost of having materials on the shelves is again, it's profits that could be distributed. They didn't put, the businesses or the residents in our district or our town, first. And I think that's wrong. They need to make sure that they have the proper staff on duty at all times. The Eversource's, I'm drawing a blank there. Eversource's leadership ended up selling some of their stocks prior to the tropical storm hitting because they realized that it was going to cause a hardship on their company. We shouldn't be worrying about our profits to the upper management of Eversource. We should be worrying about making sure that the power's on. Queen Street businesses lost their food and 3 days of revenues because, again, poor management from Eversource. Eversource, again, the way that they're going is not sustainable. I'm all about businesses making money, but they are beyond that. They're just worried about their shareholders. And again, it's at a certain point in time, Eversource is just going to continue to raise their rates, and we need to step in there to hold them accountable to it. It's just not a simple yes, no. People are losing their food. Like, how is that fair that they're putting their profits first? Our linemen, Eversource's linemen crews have decreased over the years because they're worried about their profits at the end of the day. As a business owner, I want to see profits on any business. I think you should go to work and make money. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't come at the cost of our district. And the way that they're just running the grid into the ground and not making sure that they're running properly.
All right, Rob, over to you.
Thank you. So since I've been in the legislature, I have an absolutely perfect record of voting against legislation that would have raised the cost of electricity rates. And I have been sounding the alarm the whole time I've been there, both on what's happening with our state budget and our economics and people leaving the state and being less desirable to be here, and also on the cost of energy, which is also having the same effect and severely impacting the poorest people among us, and also people on fixed incomes. Senior citizens are devastated by the rising electricity rates. And I have been consistent in saying over and over that I would blame the legislature 75% for that and 25% on Eversource, because Eversource is indeed making substantial profits, and they are not a private corporation. They should be held to a standard, and that's part of the problem. Some of the legislation that has passed in 2011, Malloy was elected, and he took DPUC, which is the regulatory agency that was autonomous, out from being that autonomous and putting it under the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and renamed it PURA. That messed a lot of things up because from that point forward, they do not have the ability to really stand on their own and work for the ratepayers. And other things that have happened is in 2018, Senate Bill 9, enacting our energy future, put us on this Green New Deal kind of race to green energy, 40% renewables by 2030. It's unsustainable, and that's what's driving up our rates more than anything else. My opponent has advocated for increasing green energy. He's quoted in the Hartford Courant doing it. We need to actually get to green energy, but we need to do it on a schedule that is both achievable, because the technology doesn't even exist to get us to 40%, and affordable for constituents. And I will say, just as my final statement here, I again challenge Mr. Perry to show anywhere, anything, any shred of evidence that I am the chief defender of Eversource, which you told to the voters in this district to earn their vote. It's not true.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Yes.
So first off, obviously, I care about the future. I want sustainable, clean energy. I understand that we can't get there too fast, but we have to find a sustainable path. My opponent voted in 2012 on HB 5542, which would have brought some of the legislation that has currently passed back then. So we could have already started working in the right direction. I think it's very important that we start working in the right direction. And again, we need to find common ground on fixing these issues. And again, we need sustainable energy at the same time. So it literally breaks down to be when you have a CEO that's making, $19 million a year and it's coming at the cost of the ratepayers.
Rob, do you want to respond?
I'm just going to ask again, at any point tonight, I would like to hear one shred of evidence to why you would tell the voters that is something patently false. I mean, I understand how politics is done, and sometimes people will say, well, you voted against this bill, so it sounds like, you favor the gun community or something like that. This is patently false. I have never done anything to defend Eversource. I have never done anything to drive up our electricity rates. It is a key issue to our voters. And you told them something untrue to earn votes. I want to see the proof.
Jack, any response to that?
Oh, yes. I didn't know I could have another 30 seconds. Again, blaming sustainable green energy, I think is, again, being an advocate and justifying why Eversource rates increased. 2012, he had a chance. It's time after time. In July, people are posting their bills, and the outrage of the pricing. And he was kind of, oh, that's capitalism. These are businesses and all that. So again, blaming green energy is again, advocating and trying to give justice or some sort of ground for Eversource. It breaks down to be corporate greed, and we're paying for it. It comes on the backs of the working class. We need to stop that. We need to hold
Jack,
Eversource accountable.
He was asking you specifically about what you've been saying about him and the supporting of Eversource. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, he's obviously pushing for Eversource. By him blaming other things other than just Eversource, he's obviously advocating for Eversource. He's voting on bills that has protected Eversource. In 2012, HB 5542, that's a direct bill that, again, a lot of that language is in the Take Back Our Grid Act. I'm happy that he voted in favor of the Take Back Our Grid Act, but it just saddens me that we're in our political season, I guess you could say, of trying to get reelected and now trying to vote on the right things during reelection campaigns. It's just wrong. You should always vote for what's right and voice the concerns of the district.
All right, Rob, I can give you 30 seconds if you want it. Otherwise, we should move on and try to get to another topic. All right. This next question came from another of our Voices initiatives from reader Dave Roush. Economic development tends to gobble up open space and agricultural land. How can we redirect activity to abandoned and underutilized spots in areas already developed? I believe this goes to Rob first.
Forgive me, Richie, I missed the first part of the question.
Economic development tends to gobble up open space and agricultural land. How can we redirect activity to better use abandoned or underutilized spots in areas already developed?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think we don't have a really significant problem with that right now because we're actually losing residents and businesses. And what we want to be doing is encouraging people to stay in the state, expand their businesses in the state, and to relocate here so that jobs are created and people are happy to move here. Just as close to a thing related to that as I can come up with is over the years, I have worked on many bills that have to do with brownfields, which is a significant problem. We have brownfields all over this state, and the cost to remediate them and get them back into profitable land, both for a business that might actually use that property for something, but also for the towns that are losing the tax revenue as long as it's not owned by someone. So I've worked on quite a few different bills there. I'm very proud of the accomplishments there. I think over the last 10 years, we have streamlined the process for remediating brownfields from years into months and even weeks on occasion. And I think that's an achievement. But one thing I want to stress here is that the Democrats are going to come back in this upcoming session, and as long as they're in the majority, this is going to be the case. They're going to expand government and they're going to raise taxes. That is what is going to happen. And that is going to keep people from coming into our state to use any land for any purpose. If we want to fix this problem, we need to make Connecticut more affordable and attractive. We have no choice. We have to make it easier for people to live here. We have to stop chasing away senior citizens who can't afford their electric bills and their taxes. We need to keep those people here. We need to get rid of the income tax on Social Security income, pensions, and for retired teachers. That's a step one to at least keep those people from leaving after they retire from their jobs. And we need to do everything in our power to create an inviting environment. And we can do that with policy.
Jack, over to you.
That pretty much breaks down to be cost. You know, it's a lot cheaper to build on open space than to remodel something. You know, I built a lot of things. You know, my main office on South Main Street in Plantsville was an old dilapidated gas station. It was very important to me to take a horrible icon or a horrible spot in our town and make it a beautiful office. You know, so I did it firsthand and I understand the cost behind it. We had an underground storage tank with fuel in it that then we had to have pumped out and cost us tens of thousands of dollars. So it's the cost of cleaning up these sites, and us being the manufacturing capital of the world, we have a lot of contamination in our site or in our state. You know, in Southington, next door to the fire station on North Main Street, the corner of Chapman Street or Chapman Road and North Main Street, that was a site that was abandoned for many years. And our town was thankfully able to secure some grants to clean that site up. And they were working with a current developer in our town to create some medical office buildings. You know, I think it's also very important that, you know, to note that Southington has increased their open space over the years. And I encourage other towns as well. So that then again, when businesses come into town, we can work with the businesses to revitalize some of our businesses in town. You know, it happened off of Water Street in Southington. You know, they're revitalizing some of that down there. And so I think it's very important that we just don't go find open space and just build there, you know, but we got to create programs to make it cost effective and make sense for that. You know, Southington has secured some grants at the state level for securing more open space for our town. But again, it becomes a bidding war because, again, open space at this is cheaper to develop than it is to remediate a site. So we've gotten better at it. I think there's a lot of more room for that. And we can't increase taxes by doing that. So we have to find, you know, that happy medium again, because I don't want to see this tax get pushed onto the working class. We pay enough in taxes. I'm with my opponent. You know, we got to get rid of the taxes, the income tax on the retirees. You know, they're leaving our state. So thank you.
All right, I think we'll try to squeeze in one more question before we go to closing statements. Jesse, you had one more, right?
Yeah, one more. This question is for Jack Perry. It was reported that the Connecticut State College and University system told the governor that they needed $69 million from the state to erase a deficit in this year's budget, caused in part by declining enrollment. The University of Connecticut is also in need of an additional support for this fiscal year. What are your thoughts? How far should the state go on bailing out the state's university system?
You know, education is very important. You know, I didn't go to college. I started my own small business, but we need to make sure that we have proper programs for those that don't want to go to college. You know, I think education is very important. We have a very skilled workforce in our state, you know, and attracting people and kids to our state to go to our school, I think is important, and making affordable college tuition, I think is very important. I went to school with a lot of kids that have a lot in college debt now, and they got years. They have a house mortgage in student loans. So we have to make sure that we make school affordable, and at the same time, it's the next generation. So I'm not for any type of bailout, let's say, but we have to work with them to make sure that they are running, a program that is, not taking on all this debt at the same time. And I think we need to broaden that and not just offer, state colleges. We need job training programs, and educate our workforce or train our workforce. I think it's very important that we have different trades rather than just a degree. A degree, again, I had friends that went to school and they got a degree and then now they have a career in something else. It's not even the degree that they went for. So I think it's very important that we work for the institutes to make sure that, we are providing, any sort of help that they need to make it sustainable for our next generation. But at the same time, we have to find that happy ground again, that again, we just can't just be giving money away. It just comes at the cost of the working class and the businesses and makes our state not attractive. So again, we just need to find happy ground. And I think we also have to increase job training programs. There's not enough of that. I went right out of school into the work field, but not everybody was able to do that. And they had to go for furthering education. And there's just some of that's not in our state. And I think it's very important that we obviously work with the schools to make sure that they have the proper funding and at the same time not putting kids in super debt, because at the end of the day, who wants to go to college and then rack up all these student loans?
All right, Rob, over to you.
Yeah, interesting question. I actually had a phone call with a constituent this afternoon, a young man who was trying to determine whether he was going to go to Tunxus or he was going to go to CCSU. And he was very concerned about the disparity in the amount of tuition costs and, what programs were available for him. And while I wasn't able to solve the problem on the phone, and I commiserated with him and said, I completely understand. I think it's an illustration of the tremendous failure that has occurred in our higher education bureaucracy in the state. I often point to this exact spot as a place where we can cut significant numbers from our state budget. The Board of Regents of Higher Education has something like, I have it written down somewhere because I might mention it tonight, a couple hundred employees that make over $200,000 a year. And not a single one of them teaches a student. I believe the government really should be much more limited in its role in a lot of areas. But the key things it should do are public safety, consumer protection, and education, because that is a mandate from our state constitution. But if we're going to do education, we have to focus on resources going into the classroom and not expanding a bureaucracy. I think that the government, and I mean the federal government here, expanding the access to loans for college was a very, very dangerous thing, which essentially expanded the opportunity for universities across our country to overcharge people. And we are still reeling from that because these young people, when they first got those loans, had no idea how much debt they were taking on. And we have just set a standard of tuition that is just not realistic. We need to start fixing that. And I would like to do that with UConn as our #1 flagship to make it really accessible to Connecticut residents, because right now the number of people that are going there, the out-of-staters are growing every year and less people from Connecticut can.
All right, and with that, we're just over an hour. So thank you both for joining us tonight. We'll move on to the closing statements, and going to the order, that goes to you, Rob. Again, 90 seconds.
Sure. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the opportunity tonight. I appreciate the Record Journal putting this on. I appreciate my opponent taking the opportunity to sit across from me, not quite face-to-face, but close enough. I really enjoyed being here. The most important thing to me is making sure that the American dream survives and is passed on to future generations. People know me as talking about grand concepts and talking about the Declaration of Independence and standing for principles and that sort of thing. But I want to make the point that those issues are not just issues in the race for president. They matter in every race and for every office. And we really need to decide as a country and as a state who we're going to be going forward. Do we want to be free people who make our own decisions, where the government is limited from being able to tell us everything, who merely want an equal opportunity to succeed and make our own way in life? Are we going to retain our identity as Americans focused on freedom and opportunity? Or are we going to choose a path that the Hartford Democrats would have us on, where the government decides everything for us, including which people and which businesses get ahead and at whose expense? I'm honored to be known as a strong defender of taxpayers. I want the cost of living as low as it can possibly be in Connecticut. That's what I work towards every day. I defend the Constitution, civil rights, and I have the courage to stand alone if necessary. People know that. I hope I've earned their support tonight. I humbly ask for your vote so I can continue the work I've started, defending American principles and rebuilding Connecticut.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Jack, over to you.
I want to thank everyone tonight for joining this debate. I think it was great. I want to just emphasize one thing. My campaign slogan is people before politics. We need to find common ground. We need to work together. You know, our state is facing a lot of challenges right now, and COVID did not help us this year. You know, we need to work on our health care. You know, our cost is increasing. You know, our infrastructure, our jobs. You know, we need to work with law enforcement because that is a very touchy thing right now. And I feel that a lot of cops aren't being, thought about, or they don't feel that they're being thought about, or their safety and their families being, put up there. Again, our teachers, right now with COVID, schools going back, we have so much to deal with right now. And it's, I think, a very challenging time. I feel that we're going to be going into a recession because COVID did not help. We need to make sure that we are working on things in our state to bring us together and find real solutions to this. I want to get up to Hartford. I'm a garbage guy. I want to take out the trash. Our government, some of the things that we're dealing with up there, our increase in our spending, the taxes just keep increasing. We need to cut those, and we have to find new streams of revenue that doesn't come onto the working class. Again, I want to just thank everybody for joining us this evening for this. I really want to get up to Hartford. Feel free to reach out to me. You can check out my website, votejackperry.com. Give me a call. I've knocked on thousands of doors trying to talk to people, and I want to be your voice at the Capitol. I feel that a lot of our elected officials put themselves on pedestals, and you can't get a hold of them. So feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Once again, thank you to both of the candidates for coming on tonight. It's always great, especially heading in so close to the elections now, to let voters hear directly from the candidates on your thoughts, and we covered a bunch of topics. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in. I just want to remind everyone we have our Voices Initiative, where we are continuing to ask, for readers and voters to submit their questions so that we can learn what you want to hear the candidates talking about as we move further or closer to the elections. You can do that at myrecordjournal.com/voices. And once again, thank you both for joining us, and thank you, Jesse, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.